Cleveland Browns and the Tennessee Titans. Now, this one, we've seen 5.5, we've seen 6, we've seen 5.5 come back up again. We are now sitting at 5.5 pretty much across the board, except it looks like there might be a rogue 6 out there. There's a 6.5 at BetMGM, actually. MGM coming with the thunder. like everybody's sitting at 5.5. BetMGM sitting at 6.5 on this thing. 53.5 your total right now. Brad, one of the things that we know about the Browns is they will get Myles Garrett back this week. They will still probably likely be without Denzel Ward. So, but getting Garrett back in there, a guy that is up for Defensive Player of the Year, he's been that good so far this year, can only be very, very good for this Browns squad. And on the Titans, we know they're coming off a complete drubbing. I mean, it just absolutely beat down last week, or Derrick Henry runs absolutely wild, goes crazy. There are some people out there who are trying to narrative this as a letdown spot for the Titans because of they're coming off this such a huge win. And the Browns actually getting Garrett back makes them, much more appealing in this thing. A lot of places sitting on that dead number, though, of 5.5. What do you think about the Browns and Titans?
Well, go and bet that 6.5 at MGM because that's silly. I think 5 is the fair number here for me. I think there's quite a lot going on. So when the Titans have the ball, I think they'll be able to move it through the air because, as you say, the Browns have got those injuries in the secondary, Denzel Ward and the safety Harrison both out. So if they can get the ball in the hands of their receivers, then I think they're going to go very well. The Browns have had one of the easiest schedules. They've faced a lot of weather in their games. All stuff that should pump up their defensive numbers, and they're still terrible. And this is a very efficient Titans offense. Now, the concern is Myles Garrett, as you say, against the right tackle, against the left tackle, whoever they send him up against. So it's a question of can they get the ball out quick enough, or can they scheme up enough play action and stuff to keep Myles Garrett out the backfield. And I'm probably of the inclination that he's going to get a sack or two, but generally they will move the ball. So I like the Titans to get their points. And then conversely, so this Titans pass rush, they're 28th ranked pass rush on the season. Now they're out Clowney and they're out, they've cut Vic Beasley because he was rubbish. So they're getting no pressure anyway. They're down 2 of their pass rushers that were there at the start of the season, and they're going up against an elite Browns offensive line. So they're not going to get any pressure either. And we know that the Baker Mayfield playbook is if he's not under pressure, he should be okay. He should score his points. So I can see both teams move up and down the field quite easily. And even though they're quite run heavy, I think there'll be enough splash plays off play action that we can get over this 53.5 total.
Yeah, Brett, we take a look at the way that this Browns team functions, as Brad said. I mean, really and truly, if Baker Mayfield has time in the pocket to throw, look, he's a capable NFL quarterback. The problem comes when there's pressure on him, and then everything goes to absolute garbage with the pass game for this team. Now, his stats don't really add up compared to a lot of these other quarterbacks because he's played in some weather games this year that affected not only him, but affected the other team as well. So when you look at these raw numbers, it's a bit skewed if you kind of go and you look at what Baker's been able to do. There were a couple of different games where the winds were in the 30, 40 mile per hour range, and nobody can pass in 30 and 40 mile per hour winds. So I don't really hold that against him a ton here. Now, of note, and this has been a pattern over the past few weeks, and we're doing this very early on Friday morning, so we have not gotten practice reports for Friday yet. A.J. Brown did not practice on Thursday. Now, he didn't practice on Thursday last week either and still played, so I'm not really reading too much into it, but he is still listed with that hip injury on the injury report and did not practice on Thursday. So by the time you hear this, there should be stuff out, so be sure and pay attention to that because this Tennessee Titans team is completely different with and without A.J. Brown out on the field.
Yeah, I think that's a rest day. They've been doing that with A.J. Brown on Thursday. So, yeah, I expect him to practice on Friday. But, yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. If he doesn't practice on Friday, definitely look at the Browns at 6.5. That's a lot of points. I wish I had access to that number. Honestly, I came into this week thinking this would be a great spot to fade Cleveland. They continue to win ugly against bad teams. And their metrics don't really align with their record at 8-3, which is just blows my mind. This is a really bad defense, and offensively, they're not good in the one area you need to be good at in 2020, and that's throwing the football. But here they are facing the Tennessee Titans, for me, the most confusing team to evaluate in the NFL because they're so good on early downs in neutral and positive script and so bad when they're behind. You're left guessing, like, which Tennessee team are you going to get this week because they are so two-faced. Some key things here. One, you mentioned Myles Garrett. We've been saying for weeks there's no player on defense that has as much of an impact as Garrett. So his return is huge against this Titans offensive line that is banged up without Taylor Lewan. Garrett and Olivier Vernon should feast here on Tannehill dropbacks. So if the Titans are playing from behind, I think that gives an advantage to Cleveland. And the other thing is, can Tennessee stop Cleveland from running the football? And this plays into the two-faced thing from earlier. Like, the Browns have success on the ground at their pace. They're 20th in pace and neutral pace this year. Tennessee's third. You can get Tennessee out of where they are best. So I really like Cleveland here. I mean, especially at 6.5. I like them at 5 too. I promise you, next week, if the Browns cover and maybe win this week, I will be fading them next week because I really did want to fade them, but this is such a weird spot against Tennessee that I think is a little fraudulent in its own right. So I have next week circled Browns against the Ravens. I think that's probably a good spot to fade the Browns next week.
So I guess my question to you guys is 53.5. Although we do think these teams will move the ball, we are talking about two of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL. The Browns, the most run-heavy team in the NFL, and then the Titans in the top 4 as far as running the ball. We know also as well, both of these teams, if they find success running the ball, they just keep doing it. It's not one of those things where they're like throwing in these pass plays just to keep the other teams guessing. We have looked up several times and seen box scores with Derrick Henry with 33 carries. It's just, if it's working, they keep doing it over and over again. And we've seen between Chubb and Hunt, those guys combined for 35 and 40 carries and stuff like that. And so even with us expecting them to be able to score, with the nature of how they go about scoring, Brad, is 53.5 too many points?
The two things I would say there is it's basically going to, we might lose a drive, as you say, because they are just bleeding a little bit more clock. But I would say, one, because they run the ball so well, they're both very efficient in the red zone. Obviously, when the field gets compressed, you've got less room to pass and running becomes more important. So they're both top 10 there. And then the other thing, they do both get splash plays. If they keep running it for 5 yards a pop, the opposing defensive coordinator, the opposing linebackers, they do react to that, and then you get space in behind, and the secondaries are both terrible, both bottom 8 units. So I think we do get enough explosive plays and enough efficiency even on long drives that, because field goals are under or over killers when you've got a total this high, but hopefully the stats suggest we shouldn't see too many of them.